Then the second most important part next to Kanyadanam is Saptapadi, wherein the bridegroom, he takes the right toe of the girl's leg and handles it very carefully, like how she will take every step, he has to bend down and help her walk every step. So this is called as Saptapadi because it is done 7 times. So during those 7 times, 7 mantras are recited and each mantra has one effect so that the newly married couple could live happily. And in each of these mantras, the name of Vishnu, Bhagavan Srimad Narayan, is invoked. For example, it is Om Ishe Ekapadi Bhavasa Mamanuvrata Bhava Vishnustvanyatu Putran Vindavahi Bahuste Santu Jaradashtayaha. So this is the first mantram. Then you have the other mantram for each and every step. So this Saptapadi was carried out very beautifully in Janaka's marriage. Whatever rituals we have been following as on date in our Hindu marriages, though they are all mentioned in the Vedas and the Upanishads, the most important example, like how we need a demonstration, the demonstration was showed to us by Bhagavan and Lakshmi themselves in their incarnation as Ram and Sita. Saint Tyagaraja, who in his kritis, in a set of kritis which is called as Pancharatna kritis, he sees the beauty at which Sita secretly looked at Ram. He very well mentions this in his famous kriti Kanakana Ruchira, which is set to the ragam Varali. It seems Sita wanted to have the glimpse of Ram. In those days, there was a certain quality which was generally associated with women called as shyness, lajja. So, Sita had this quality that she would not, women in those days had this quality of not looking at men directly. So Sita, who wanted to look at Ram but could not do it, but she wanted to do it, at the end of it what she did was, she found out a way. She had worn a huge set of bangles in her hands, and since she was just about 6 years old, those bangles would have been very large to her hands. What she did was, she acted as if her bangles were falling down, and in the vyajam, in that cause of getting her bangles right to the position in her hands, she secretly looked at Ram through the glances of her eyes, which were at the corner glances of her eyes. She thought that this glance, whatever she had that of Ram, nobody in the darbar, nobody in the court had noticed. But Saint Tyagaraja says, "Hey Mata, while you looked secretly at my father, I saw that particular position." And when Saint Tyagaraja has seen something, he will never be without putting that in his kritis, in his compositions, wherein he says, Kala kala manu mukha kala galigina Sita kulu kuchu Ora kannulanu juchu Ninu kana kana ruchira kana kava sana Ninu kana kana ruchira. The same Saint Tyagaraja, after having given his beautiful set of Upanyasams to all his Sishyas, to all his students about Sita and Ram's life, it was the Tarunam, it was that particular instance where Sita and Ram were to get married. He was sitting in this little village called Thiruvayyaru in Tamil Nadu and was imagining how their marriage would have taken place. He was immediately transported to the Darbar. Since he thought, I am not a great Kshatriya king. How can I even participate in this great marriage of Jagannmata Lakshmi, who was now incarnated as Sita, and Jagatpita Mahavishnu, who was incarnated as Ram? So he was standing next to a pillar very secretly, but he thought that he was very fortunate for having had the glimpse of Sita and Ram's marriage. At that instance, he turned left and he was surprised to see Hanuman next to him. And right before him was Lord Shiva. They had all come to have the glimpse of Sita and Ram's marriage. With this joy, with this happiness, with this mood, he sprung into one of the most beautiful songs of a Hindu marriage, wherein he celebrates this Vaibhogam, this great ceremony of Sita and Ram. Sita Kalyana Vaibhogame Rama Kalyana Vaibhogame Pavana Stuti Patra Pavana Charitra Pavana Stuti Patra Pavana Charitra Ravi Soma Varanetra Ramaniya Gatra Ravi Swama Varanetra Ramaniya Gatra Sita Kalyana Vaibhogame Nigama Gama Vihara Nirupama Sharira Nigama Gama Vihara Nirupama Sharira Nagadhara Ghavidara Natalokadhara Nagadhara Ghavidara Natalokadhara Sita Kalyana Vaibhogame Rama Kalyana Vaibhogame Parameshanuta Gita Bhavajaladhipota Parameshanuta Gita Bhavajaladhipota Dharani Kula Sanjata Tyagarajanota Dharani Kula Sanjata Tyagarajanota Sita Kalyana Vaibhogame Rama Kalyana Vaibhogame. Now comes an important question. In Srimad Ramayanam, we have noticed that there is something called as Sita's marriage. Likewise, in Srimad Bhagavatam, we will be noticing Rukmini's marriage. Here we had Sita Kalyanam, then we have Rukmini Kalyanam. When there is the narration of Kurma Avataram, how Lakshmi arose from the Kshira Sagaram and how she married, so we have Lakshmi Kalyanam. So if we notice it is Sita Kalyanam, then we have Rukmini Kalyanam, and we have Lakshmi Kalyanam. We do not call it by the other names. We don't call it as Rama Kalyanam, Krishna Kalyanam. At least if it is Rama Kalyanam, it is understandable because Ram had only one marriage. He had only one wife. So he had Sita. Sita's only marriage was with Ram. Now I can call it Rukmini Kalyanam. Whereas I cannot call it Krishna Kalyanam, because once if I say Krishna Kalyanam, then people will ask, whom are you mentioning with? Whether it was Rukmini, Satyabhama, Jambavati or the other 16,108 wives. So if you notice all the marriages in our epics and itihasam, it is only the lady's name which is put. Why is it not the man's name? Because it is the lady who is responsible for taking the man to the path of righteousness. It is generally believed that sahadharma charitava. So it is she who will lead him, and it will not be he who leads her. So the name like Sita's Kalyanam or Rukmini's Kalyanam or Lakshmi's Kalyanam is only to indicate that women were given a prominent place in our itihasam than men. There is one Purana Shlokam wherein what these people, be it the girl's mother, the girl's father, the girl's relatives or the girl's friends, think about the person whom she is getting married to. Kanya varau te rupam. Kanya varau te rupam. The girl who's to get married, she always looks at the beauty, whether the person whom she is getting married to is handsome or not. Kanya varau te rupam. Mata vittam. The girl's mother is bothered about how much of property he has. Mata vittam. Pita shrutam. The girl's father is bothered about whether the boy, the marriage boy, has a good sound family background. Pitta shrutam. Pita shrutam. Bandhavaha kulam icchanti. Bandhavaha, the relatives, want a very good clan. They want a very good clan so that they could go and tell their relatives that my relative has recently married a person coming from this great family. Bandhavaha kulam icchanti. Mishtannam itare janaha. Now it is time for them, the Puranam, to describe us. We all go to marriages only to eat. So, Mishtannam itare janaha. The rest of them are bothered only about food. So, our Purana Shlokam, the same time at which they have the Vedic thoughts, they were not short in humor. All these people. Now, when I have said that Ram and Sita's marriage had taken place, it should not be forgotten that the other three sons of Dasharatha were also married. Whenever you go to a shop, you buy a certain thing, you get 2 or 3 things free along with it. Likewise, Janaka gave his other daughter and the 2 daughters of his brothers in marriage to the other 3 sons of Dasharatha. So Ram married Sita, Bharata was married to Mandavi, Lakshmana was married to Urmila, and Shatrughna was married to Shrutakirti. So these 4 marriages had taken place. But if you remember, Ram had broken the bow. He intended lifting the bow, but since it was a bow with a lot of cracks that had resulted due to the battle of Vishnu and Shiva, so apparently the bow broke, and hearing the dhwani, hearing the sound of this bow break, Parashurama marched from his place right away to the darbar of Mithila. Actually, the married couples who started in their chariots from Mithila, while they started itself, there were certain bad omens. Bad omens are divided into 2 categories. It is called as Shakunam and the other it is called as Nimittam. We generally confuse with these words. Even in Hindi, people say, ye shubh shakun hai. But shakunam is not a word that can be used everywhere. Though it is meant for an omen, it cannot be used everywhere. What is shakunam and what is nimittam? Shakunam comes from the word shaku, means that omen which is decided on based on the flight of the birds. So, if a bird moves from left to right or right to left or from north to south or south to north, based on this our Purvacharyas have said that this indicates good, this indicates something bad. So only if a person knows about how to come or derive a conclusion out of the flight of birds, and only on looking at the birds he can decide Shakunam. Whereas Nimittam is something which can be decided based on other categories of animals excluding the birds. It is called Nimittam. It seems Dasharatha saw certain Shubha Shakunam as well as Dushyakunam. He saw certain good omens, at the same time he saw certain bad omens. He was worried. Vasishtha said, don't worry, hey King Dasharatha, don't worry. While they were marching, as I was mentioned, Parashurama came to the darbar While he marched to the darbar, he came to know that the couples were walking towards Ayodhya. He followed the same path and he blocked the path of Dasharatha and the army of people who followed him. Dasharatha, who could recognize Parashurama, immediately fell at his feet and said, "Hey Parashurama, please don't show all your anger on my dear sons. They are just very young and we are falling at your feet. So we take Sharanam at your feet. Kshatraroshat roshat prashantastvam brahmanascha mahatapah balanam mama putranam abhayam datumarhasi. Please make us fearless. We are as of now very much afraid of you. Please don't consider whatever act my sons have done as a very huge or a big crime. Please forgive them on behalf of me." Parashurama said, "I am not going to forgive them." Immediately Ram marched forward and said, "Hey Parashurama Maharishi, I had wanted to lift the bow, but I never had the intention of breaking it. But due to the cracks that the bow had already had, it broke. But now I seek forgiveness from this great person of yours, hey Parashurama, but please do forgive me." But Parashurama did not again budge. He said, "You have broken the Shiva Dhanush. You had broken the bow which Shiva had during the Yuddham. But now I have the bow which Vishnu used for Yuddham. The bow which you had, Shiva's bow, had cracks in it. But this Vishnu Dhanush, this bow of Vishnu does not have cracks in it. So you may please lift this bow." Rama took the bow and he could handle the bow so very well, and he said, "Hey Parashurama, you had so much of arrogance. So please tell me some destination so that I could shoot this arrow from your bow." Parashurama said, "Hey Ram, I have now surrendered to your feet. I have nothing else but my arrogance, all the power that I have acquired through so many years, through so much of penance. Please aim your bow at it." But Ram said, "I may aim, but I will not do it because you are the son of a great Brahmana Jamadagni. Hey Parashuram, you may now leave to your forest and start doing penance at peace." Once this incident is over, two important questions should compulsorily come. Whether it may come or not, I am going to give answers to those questions. Two questions have to come in your minds. The first question is, when we witness the Dashavataram of Bhagavan, the 10 most important incarnations, we have Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Nrisimha, Vamana, Parashurama, Balarama, Rama, Krishna, Kalki. The 6th avataram, the 6th incarnation is Parashurama avataram. It was also a Rama avataram. His name was Ram, but he was called Parashuram or Bhargava Ram because he came in the kulam of Bhargava Maharishi, so he was called Bhargava Ram. And since he carried an axe is always called as Parashu. Since he was very well trained in this art of handling an axe, he was called Parashuram, but his original name was Ram. So the 6th incarnation, the 7th incarnation and the 8th incarnation, they all have the same word Ram. But there is the only difference that you can find is with the prefix and suffix of it. The 6th avataram is Ram, 7th avataram is Ram, the 8th avataram is Ram. But the 6th avataram, the prefix is Parashu. So it is Parashuram. In the 7th avataram, the 7th incarnation, it is Ram again, but you have a suffix there. It is Ram. And the 8th incarnation is that of Balarama avataram. Again the word is Ram. He was also called Haladhara because he used to have the art of carrying the plow. So it was called Balarama avataram. Parashurama avataram is the 6th. The 7th avataram is that of Ramachandra. When I have said that Ramachandra brought down the arrogance of Parashurama, people will now have a question as to how can Vishnu win over Vishnu, because both of them were incarnations of Bhagavan. How can Ramachandra win over the incarnation of the same Supreme Personality of Godhead as Parashuram? Here we should realize that though these Dashavatarams, though these 10 important incarnations or the other incarnations which have been mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, though they are all that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Srimad Narayan, the way in which the incarnation has taken place would differ. Incarnations are of two types. The first avataram is called as Gauna or Aveshyavataram. It is called by two names, Gauna Avataram or Aveshyavataram. The second category is Mukhya ya Purna Avataram. It is either called as Mukhya Avataram or Purna Avataram. Under the first category, the Gauna or Aveshya Avataram, we have Kapila, Dattadreya, Parashuramaha. They are all those incarnations which fall under the first category. It is for that reason we generally don't find as many temples as what we find for Ram or Krishna for Parashuram. We have never heard somebody mentioning about Parashuram's temple, Dattadreya temple. Though there may be one Dattadreya temple in Pushkar and one near Pune, there are not many temples for Dattadreya, and people who have had proper lessons through Kalakshepam or Upanyasam will never even visit the temple of Parashuram or Dattadreya. Why? Because though it is undoubtedly an incarnation of Bhagavan, it was the Aveshya Avataram, wherein he had to come urgently, and he had he used to project only certain qualities of it, and of the Parabrahmam, and he never projected the other qualities like Saulabhyam, Saushilyam, Saundaryam, Ardavam, Arjavam. He never projected those qualities. If it was an Aveshya Avataram, it had come with lot of anger and agitation. If you notice or if you see the shlokas which deal with Parashurama in Srimad Bhagavatam, he was a very short-tempered person who would pick up a quarrel or a fight for small things. So there is one more important part to it. If you have to go deeper into this, Parashuram's father was Jamadagni, who was killed by a king called as Kartiviryarjuna. Kartiviryarjuna was the king who killed Parashurama's father Jamadagni. To take vengeance on him, Parashurama killed Kartiviryarjuna. Parashurama who killed Kartiviryarjuna, his arrogance of Parashurama was brought down by Ramachandra. But surprisingly, all the three, that is Ramachandra, prior to it was Parashurama, prior to him was Kartiviryarjuna, all three of them were the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the way in which the three of them incarnated were different. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, with all his qualities, with all his auspicious attributes, incarnated in the form of Ram. So it was a Purna Avataram. Whereas it was an Aveshya Avataram in the case of Parashuram, and it was even more Aveshya Avataram in the case of the king Kartiviryarjuna. So if you see the order in which Bhagavan has been winning, Kartiviryarjuna, who was a very strong Aveshya Avataram of Bhagavan, was won over by the Aveshya Avataram of Bhagavan called as Parashuram. The Aveshya Avataram of Parashuram, of Bhagavan called as Parashuram, was won over by the Purna Avataram of Bhagavan called as Ramachandra. So the doubt which arose in our minds whether how Vishnu can win over Vishnu, it is not the question of Vishnu winning over Vishnu. It is the question of Purna Avataram which is winning over Gauna Avataram or Aveshya Avataram. The second most important question that may arise in our minds is, I had mentioned something called as Sharanagati Shastram. Ramayanam, Srimad Ramayanam of Valmiki is no different from Sharanagati Shastram. And I had also mentioned that this Srimad Ramayanam in most of the instances has something called as Sharanagati. And based on this Sharanagati, Swami Vedanta Deshika had written an exquisite work called as Abhaya Pradana Saram. In this Abhaya Pradana Saram, he lists down the number of Sharanagatis made in Srimad Ramayanam, and he also mentions what are the reasons why this Sharanagati was successful and what are the reasons why this Sharanagati was not successful. So he gives a list of reasons why Sharanagatis were a success or why they were a failure. The first Sharanagati, if you remember, we saw at the start of Bala Kandam was wherein, unable to bear the atrocities committed by Ravana and his brothers, the Devas under the head of Indra approached Brahma, and Brahma took all the demigods to Ksheerasagaram, to the Milky Ocean, they all offered Sharanagati at the feet of Divya Dampati, Srimad Narayan and Lakshmi. And Bhagavan said, Abhayam Sarva Bhutebhyo, don't worry, I will give you Abhayam. So this was the first Sharanagati. And the second Sharanagati was wherein Dasharatha made a Sharanagati to Parashuram. He said, Hey Parashurama Maharishi, my sons, they are just at the age of 12 and they never intended breaking Shiva Dhanush. They did not want to break the Dhanush of Shiva. It was the order of sage Vishwamitra to Ram to go and look at the bow, handle the bow. Rama lifted the bow, and since it was a bow with cracks prior, it broke. So it was not their mistake. So please leave your anger on us, and we are offering surrender at your feet. So he said, Kshatra roshat prashantastvam brahmanascha mahatapaha balanam. My sons are Balaha. They are all little boys. Balanam mama putranam. My sons are little boys. Abhayam datum arhasi. Please, we are falling at your feet. So he had done a Sharanagati. The first Sharanagati, what Devas did under the guidance of Brahma at the feet of Divya Dampati, was a success. Whereas the Sharanagati which King Dasharatha had done at the feet of Parashuram was not a success, because Parashuram did not comply to it. He said, no, I cannot give you Abhayam. I am still angry. Why did the first Sharanagati turn successful, whereas the second Sharanagati was a failure? Because though Sharanagati, which is called as Nyasa Vidya, the act of unconditionally surrendering at the feet of Bhagavan, the Divya Dampati, though it is one of the most important Vidyas out of the 32 Vidyas, it says that you can offer Sharanagati only to the feet of certain people, and that certain people are only 2 in number who are regarded as a couple, that is Divya Dampati. You cannot go offer Sharanagati at the feet of any person whom you like, because the Shastras have to agree. And first of all, the person to whose feet you are offering Sharanagati should have the power and the capability to offer Abhayam to you. He should have the power to say, Abhayam Sarva Bhutebhyo, don't worry, I will protect you. To say, I will protect you, he must himself have the power to protect himself. So, when Dasharatha surrendered at the feet of Parashuram, Parashuram though was the incarnation of Bhagavan, he had all the power and capability, he was still an Aveshya Avataram. He was still a person who had not won over anger. Whereas Ram was a person who had won over anger. If you remember the first few questions what Valmiki asked to Narada, Konasvin Sampratam Loke Gunavan. Oh Maharishi, could you please tell me a person with 16 qualities? Konasvin Sampratam Loke Gunavan, Kascha Viryavan, who has the power. Then he said, Jitakrodaha. Hey Maharishi, please tell me the person who has won over anger. Only to a person who knows how to control his temperament and anger can we offer Sharanagati. Parashurama had no control over his temper. So how could Dasharatha, such a learned king, offer Sharanagati at the feet of Parashuram? So the first attribute, the first most important quality for Sharanagati, to whose feet you are offering, was not right. He did not offer it to the right person. Second most important thing was, he offered it at the wrong time. When the first Sharanagati happened, where Devas went and surrendered at the feet of Vishnu, Vishnu was in no hurry nor was it in agitation. He was in his Ksheerasagaram and he was always thinking about Jagat Hitam. He was thinking about how to sustain the world. So he was doing his duty. So the time at which the Devas surrendered was the right time. Whereas now Parashurama Maharishi was coming with so much of anger and temperament, in a mood to fight with Dasharatha and his sons, and at that point of time, if Dasharatha goes and offers Sharanagati, it means it is the wrong time. So the first quality was he offered Sharanagati to the feet of the wrong person, Parashuram, and he even offered Sharanagati at the wrong time. The third most important thing was, in the first Sharanagati where Devas had surrendered to Vishnu, they never went and surrendered directly to him. They went through the intervention of an Acharya. They went through the intervention of a preceptor. who was Brahma there. But here, King Dasharatha should have asked Vasishtha Maharishi or Vishwamitra Maharishi so that they could intervene as an Acharya and offer Sharanagati at the feet of Parashuram. Whereas he did not do that. He directly went and surrendered at the feet of the wrong person, Parashuram, at the wrong time. So when he surrendered at the feet of the wrong person at the wrong time without the intervention of Acharya, his Sharanagati did not get fulfilled. So these two important questions which have been answered by our Purvacharyas needs great tributes and great vandanam from the behalf of we devotees. So whatever we have seen as of now, in Narayaniyam, Narayana Nambudri summarizes, he says, आरुन्धाने रुषान्दे भृगुकुलतिलके संक्रम्य स्वतेजो याते यातोऽस्य योध्यां सुखमिह निवसन् कान्तया कान्तमूर्ते शत्रुघ्नेनैकदाथो गतवति भरते मातुलास्याधिवासम् तातारब्धोऽभिषेकस्तव किल विहतः केकयाधीशपुत्र्याय. Whatever we have seen in the essence is the essence of Bala Kandam. We have seen what is the importance of the word Ramayanam. We have also seen the importance of Valmiki Maharishi. Valmiki Maharishi, who was initially a dacoit and then turned to a great ascetic, a great recluse by the intervention of his Acharya, his Manasika Acharya Narada Maharishi. The questions what he posed to Narada Maharishi, and Narada Maharishi, who said that the only answer to all his questions was Ram, who was born in Ikshvaku Kulam. Though he had an answer, Valmiki Maharishi went along with his Sishya Bharadwaja to Tamasa Nadi, wherein he saw one of the birds being shot by a hunter. He immediately released his first shloka in the form of a curse, and he was worried that his first shloka had been in the form of a curse, wherein Narada Maharishi appeared again. He said, "Hey Valmiki, don't worry, your first shloka was not a curse, it was full of auspiciousness, it was full of mangalam." And then he started his work, wherein he described how King Dasharatha ruled for such a long time. He did not have a son, and then with the intervention of Vasishtha Maharishi asked Dasharatha Maharaja to invite Rishyashringa to perform Ashwamedha yagya, which turned into a putra-kameshti. At the end of it, a person, the Yajna Purusha, arose with a patram, with a vessel full of payasam, which was distributed in the proportion of 50% to Kausalya, 25% to Sumitra, 12.5 to Kaikeyi, and 12.5, the rest, the 12.5 was again given to Sumitra. As a result, Rama, Lakshmana, Bharata, Shatrughna were born. The bonding that existed between Ram and Lakshman, the bonding that existed between Bharata and Shatrughna, though the pair was Rama, Lakshmana, Bharata, Shatrughna, still all four of them were four united brothers. We also saw how the poets put Ram to sleep using a lullaby. We also saw how Vishwamitra Maharshi one day barged into the courtroom of King Dasharatha seeking help so that he could come and protect the sacrifice whatever he was performing in the forest. He asked for Ram. Dasharatha initially he said that he will not be in a position to send Ram. By the intervention of his Kulaguru again, Vasishtha, he sends Ram and Lakshman along with Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra gives them Atibala and Bala Mantram, which will be as vaccines or protection to them. Then he also gave various Astrams and Shastrams, the most important nuclear weapons to them. And after this, Tataka, the most undeserving demoness, was killed by Ram. After that, Maricha, the son of Tataka and Sunda, was driven 100 yojanas far away, and Subahu was killed. Yagyam was Samrakshanam was done, that is the Yagya Samrakshanam was done. The protection of Yagya had taken place very effectively by Ram and Lakshman. After this, the various Kathamritam, to enrich the knowledge of his students Ram and Lakshman, Vishwamitra gave them the Vrittantam of Kurma Avataram, Vamana Avataram, and then as they came, Ram also relieved Ahalya, that is Gautama Maharishi's wife, out of the curse of Gautama Maharishi himself. Then Janaka invited Vishwamitra to the Swayamvaram of his daughter. Hence, we have seen that Ram and Lakshman followed Vishwamitra to the great city of Mithila. We have also seen how the poets beautifully describe the meeting of Ram and Sita in the garden, in the balcony area and on the streets. Then we also saw how the other princes and the kings could not lift the bow, whereas Ram lifted the bow, and due to the amount of cracks that it already had, it broke. And we also saw how duty conscious and how much of importance Ram gave to his parents, wherein he said that he will not be able to marry without their presence. Hence, Janaka sent an invitation to the king Dasharatha and all his queens, who all marched with the citizens to the city of Mithila. The marriage had taken place of Ram with Sita, Lakshman with Urmila, then Bharata with Mandavi and Shatrughna with Shrutakirti. After the marriage had taken place, we also saw how Parashurama came and acted as an obstacle to the newly married couples. Then we also saw how Ram effectively brought down the arrogance, the arrogance of what Parashurama had. So this summary of Bala Kandam is beautifully given in a Kriti, a composition of Muthuswami Dikshitar, wherein he says, Shri Rama Chandro Rakshatu Mam Rakshasadi Haro Raghuvara Shri Rama Bharata Grajo Kaushikaya Rakshako Tata Kantaka Bharata Grajo Kaushikaya Rakshako Tata Kantaka Shri Rama Mithila Nagara Pravesh Maheshwara Dhanubheda ko Sita Kalyana Mithila Nagara Pravesha Maheshwara Dhanubheda ko Sita Kalyana Mahotsava Vaibhava Sita Kalyana Mahotsava Vaibhava Yuta Vichitra Vesha ko Sita Kalyana Mahotsava Vaibhava Yuta Chitra Vesha ko Madhurya Ganamritapana Priya Guru Guhavi Shvaso Madhurya Ganamritapana Priya Guru Guhavi Shvaso Mahadevi Bhakta Parashurama Garva Harola Shri Rama Chandro Rakshatu Mam Rakshasadi Haro Raghuvara Shri Rama 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 Shri Rama Rama इत्यार्षे श्रीमद् रामायणे वाल्मीकिये आदिकाव्ये बालकाण्डं समाप्तम्।